Hello, and welcome to our webinar series, Braving BFRBs, Expert Insight on Skin Picking and Hair Pulling. This series is led by a panel of experienced therapists and clinical psychologists who are dedicated to exploring the emotional and psychological aspects of body-focused repetitive behaviors, or also commonly known as BFRBs. So today we'll dive into practical tools and strategies for managing these challenges. Our goal with this series is to provide support, education, and empowerment to anyone affected by skin picking or hair pulling, as well as to those looking to better understand and help manage these behaviors. So in today's session, I'll be speaking with our program's Chief Clinical Lead and Clinical Psychologist Dr. Sofia Wenzler, and Clinical Psychologist and Program Therapist Vedrana Mirkovic to explore key topics surrounding BFRBs. We'll be covering questions about treatment approaches, the support available, common concerns, and strategies to help those on their recovery journey. Thank you both for being here. Hi, ladies.
Happy to be here. Hello.
Excellent.
Excited.
So to kick off our discussion, I'm sure our audience would love to get to know you both a little bit better. So I'd love if both of you could just share with us what first drew you to specialize in BFRBs and why you're passionate about working in this field. Sophia, you could go first.
Sure. And I just want to start by apologizing for my voice and any sneezing that might occur later on. And I'll try my very best to put myself on mute, but I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold. So yeah, apologies in advance. And yeah, what drew me to work in the field of BFRBs? So that's a good question because it's actually I am trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and interestingly, BFRBs, like we went over all kinds of psychological problems and diagnoses, and BFRBs were not part of the regular curriculum. Like it's still, I think, a little bit neglected in a lot of places. So I didn't come across it when I did my clinical training, but later on in my private practice, I did have clients who suffered from BFRB, such as skin picking and hair pulling. I remember specifically, I think my first client ever with a BFRB was a little girl. She was like 9 or 10 years old, and she suffered from skin picking, and like she picked the inside of her hands, and the upper layer of the skin was completely gone. And I was like, what is this? What is this thing? And I started reading about it, and then being a CBT therapist, my first impulse is to kind of just think about it logically, think about the cycle, which is still very important to understand the cycle of trigger, a trigger that will lead to an urge, that will lead to the picking or pulling, short-term relief, and then in the long term, feelings of shame and like maybe even scars or bald spots. And I was like, okay, yeah, we just have to break the cycle. But then the more I got into it, I realized how complex it can be. And like so many things can be a trigger, it can be boredom, stress, emotions, thoughts, specific situations, sometimes just, an itching somewhere. And yeah, I just found myself to be fascinated and by this whole thing. And I realized that when I work with people who suffer from a BFRB, basically we touch on all aspects of life in the end. It's not that this isolated thing. Yeah, so I just thought it was very interesting, also challenging sometimes. And that's what kind of drew me in. And then I started specializing more and more. And now here at Helping Minds, it's a big part of my work.
Amazing. And for yourself, Vedrana?
Well, I share Sofia's experience of not learning much about BFRBs during university or, during those clinical hours we had, even though, it's different part where I studied. So I think biggest thing that draw me to BFRBs is the fact that everything seems so simple that it can go under the radar, not even being noticed as something that should be treated unless it's like really serious symptoms like Sofia's a client. So
Exactly.
it seems so simple, something that is just a thing people do and they can stop doing with more or less effort anytime they feel like it. And once you start working with that or trying to understand what's really hidden behind those triggers, why those specific triggers, then you stumble upon huge mystery of human experience, and then you need to dive into that. And I'm a sucker for human mysteries, so this is how I started specializing in BFRBs, really trying to understand what's happening there. And it's we know from psychology that we can see patterns, we can understand average things in humans, though it's extremely interesting seeing what specific triggers are and specific reactions to specific clients. So it's always, a new thing to learn about.
That like reminds me of something that I tell clients. It's when they come in and then they have like this problem or this behavior that they're ashamed of, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so weird," or "This is only happening to me." And I'm like, "No, it's just as you said, it's a mystery. And once you understand where it comes from and the roots and the circumstances, then everything can make perfect sense, right? Nothing is weird, nothing is out of the ordinary when you understand where it's coming from."
I can relate somewhat to both of your stories. I think as a counselor here, where I am, I've been in mental health for 2 decades. So I'm perhaps giving my age away a little bit, but
You started early on.
I did. Nice excuse. We heard about this this disorder called trichotillomania, and it's something that we couldn't even pronounce just because we didn't say it so often. And it was this the myth, as we know now, this rare condition that was barely sort of spoken about, touched about. Yeah, and now it's thank to the heavens that obviously it's not the case anymore. But it's come full circle for me. So from a disorder that I could barely pronounce, to having a son now who's 7 years old, who is a hair puller himself as well, who started pulling his hair from the age of 1. It's a full circle, and it's amazing to be part of this group and the community, and just incredibly grateful that there's just so much awareness now, and we all get to say the word trichotillomania without having to stumble over our words. So it's fantastic. Vedrana, I just have another question for you. So we speak a lot about stress, specifically when it comes to BFRBs. So how does stress affect BFRBs, and what are some strategies for managing stress in a way that supports healing?
Okay, so I'll go back to what I just said. What's interesting in BFRBs for me. So despite that popular belief that BFRBs are just habits that one is supposed to just stop whenever they decide to do so, we know today that they are much more complex than that, and that BFRBs actually are behaviors with more layers than just simple habitual layer of it. So one layer is that people tend to pick or pull because it's easy, it's accessible, it's always there, it's something really ingrained in their bodies. The other layer or the function of BFRBs is always connected to our emotional state, including, stress or stressful situations. And this is where we get to talk about BFRBs as coping mechanisms. All of us growing up learned how to, deal with our own experiences with life, and we developed some special ways how to cope with life in general. And some people among us developed BFRBs as their special ways to cope with life. because BFRBs are focused on body, we see that, or we learned about the connection that we can see between what our body is signaling, what our body is trying to tell us by sending us the signal of an urge to pull or pick, and how do we react to those messages? Do we pull? Do we pick? And what we can do to change our reaction, to start learning how to interpret our body's signals, so the urges, as something that can help us understand what we really need, and that can help us change our reactions, learn additional strategies, how to cope. In general, strategies like deep breathing, mindfulness, any strategies that come from mindfulness approach, just including body scans, some mindful activities, mindfulness walking, stuff like that, can help us actually be more in contact with our inner worlds, with our bodies, which can help us understand what we really need in those situations when we feel like we need to pick or pull. It seems simple, as I mentioned before, when we say it like that, but it's a really long journey with a lot of ups and downs, and something that takes time and takes really diving into the reasons hidden behind urges, and really understanding them on emotional level as well as cognitive level, so we can learn how to apply strategies that we can learn the best we can to help ourselves.
Mm. We spoke about this before, before we did this webinar, and we went over this particular question. And sometimes those who are looking for strategies and treatment, they may feel a little bit frustrated by hearing that it may be as simple as breathing, or some mindfulness strategies. I just wanted to ask you just a little bit, just to maybe touch on that a little bit. So for those who are listening are like, oh, what do you mean I must just breathe through it? Can you just quickly explain
That's fair.
why breathing is why breathing is helpful and why is it so important? As simple as it is, why is it so effective?
How come psychology came down to mindfulness, overnight? So yeah, I know it sounds like, good propaganda for CBT or mindfulness to talk about deep breathing. As I mentioned, it's more complex than that in terms of, for someone who is suffering from any BFRB, part of their main problem is kind of like, I would say, maybe inability, but it's not really that. It's like they are blind for their own inner world in some way. They're not seeing something or not noticing something that is happening inside of them. So they feel an urge and then they pick or pull as an automatic reaction. Understanding the first part, the root problem, what we are not seeing when we feel an urge, how we are distracting ourselves from something, avoiding something by picking or pulling, that's the key. Much, before breathing exercises, we can learn that, and they won't be helpful unless we work on understanding what's really hidden behind an urge. So when I said that we need to start learning how to hear our bodies and the signals that our bodies are sending that seem or feel like an urge before we dive into them, this is what I mean, actually doing the good therapy work to understand what we really need, so we can focus on how to satisfy our needs with strategies that we can learn and incorporate in daily life.
Thanks, Vedrana. And Sofia, speaking about the work and treatment, what role does emotional regulation play in BFRBs? And how can individuals work on this to reduce their urges?
I was stuck a little bit with Vedrana's sentence of like how psychology came down to mindfulness. But that's for it plays such an important role, but it made me really reflect, because it really like it. I talk about it more and more in therapy, but it's not all we do. But anyways, yeah. So emotion regulation. So as we mentioned, a lot of different things can be a trigger for BFRB. It doesn't have to be a certain emotion, but certain emotions are a very common trigger for BFRB. So naturally, emotion regulation is also very important for it. It's also emotion regulation is something that's important for almost every client that I see in the program or in my private practice. And I think it's also worth remembering that that doesn't only mean, okay, when I'm having a strong emotion, for example, I'm fighting with my husband or my child has a tantrum, then I might have the urge to pick or pull to regulate myself. Sometimes it's more complex than that. Sometimes also clients tell me, well, no, like I don't pick or pull like sometimes I have no specific emotion before that. And sometimes really it's not related to emotion regulation, but sometimes it is just the connection is not as clear. It's more this thing of like specifically highly functioning people that go through their lives, and they might encounter all kinds of situations that evoke some kind of negative emotion, they at their job or with their family, but they go through it, they function, they do their stuff, they deal with all of it, and they kind of put the emotion aside because there's no time for it right now. And then it kind of like just bubbles up in the evening because there's this box full of emotions. And then once I let my guard down, all of a sudden it might, lead to an urge, and I don't even know that is related to any emotion. Or maybe it's just like, well, I've been working so hard pushing through all of this, like I almost feel like I deserve the relief, that I get from the behavior. And then it's also related to emotions, just the connection is not as clear. And so, yes, emotion regulation is important. Just when we talk about emotion regulation, for me, it's very important because the word itself is kind of misleading. It almost sounds like you regulate your emotions. It's like a volume switch or whatever you call it, for people who it's like on your phone when you put the volume up and down. For those who don't know the switch that you had on a boombox or a record player or whatever.
You're giving your age away now.
Yeah, I'm so old. So it's not like that. And then we talk about skills, emotion regulation skill, but it's also not as easy as that. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna punch my pillow for a minute, or I'm gonna take 10 deep breaths. For me, emotion regulation means more. Emotions are not like this pesky thing that I just want to get rid of or regulate or tone down. The emotions are a signal to us that something is going on. And emotion regulation for me means mainly that I won't let the emotion take control over what's going on. I want to listen to the emotion, but I don't want the emotion to control me in that moment. So I might be very angry when I fight with my husband, but I'm not gonna let the emotion take over and just like insult him or slap him or whatever. And so for me, emotion regulation, basically, you could break it down to 4 steps. And it's very important as a first step to notice the emotion and just even don't immediately try to push it away. Give it some space to the opposite, right? So you might be in this moment and you just pick your skin, and then an emotion comes up. You might be disappointed. You might think ahead and think, oh, I'm going to meet this and that person. I wanted to go out, and now I don't, I'm scared. I'm anxious because they might notice, or they might notice that I'm in a bad mood, and then I'm going to be a downer, right? So first of all, just like mindfully, because mindfulness is important. Um, Notice what's going on and try to understand what the emotion is telling you. Oh, yeah, like my anxiety is trying to keep me safe because there might be some kind of danger. If I go out, people might notice. And then the second important step of staying in control, mindfully reflecting. Do I want to follow this emotion, or is there another behavior that will serve me better? In that case, maybe, okay, yeah, like my anxiety is trying to keep me safe, but if I go out, I might actually improve my mood. I might have a good time. And even if someone notices the picking, maybe I'm strong enough, to deal with that, right? And if I just stay at home, I don't have all of those experiences. So if I stay connected to myself and mindful, I'm not going to let the emotion take over, and I'm going to choose what works best for me in that moment. And that for me is regulated behavior. And then afterwards, the fourth step for me is self-kindness. Okay, so I decided to not act on my emotion. What can I do to make it as easy for myself as possible? Do I want to put on a nice upbeat song that's gonna cheer me up and create some motivation to go out, or do I want to share with a friend what's going on, or do I want to take 10 deep breaths? Um,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I think that's what I have to say
So,
in terms
so
of
for those
emotional
who are
regulation.
probably thinking about it, but aren't able to ask the question, if I were to do this practice, am I going to get it right the first time? Am I going to be able to go through all of those 4 steps as you explained them, one after the other with ease, trying it for the first time?
No, like I don't get it right every time. I mean, or
Yeah.
we all have our automatic responses to. That's such a good question, and thank you. Like I don't. I'm going through the step. Oh, it's very easy. Do A, B, C, and D. Um, obviously, it's not as easy. And if we would all follow those steps all the time, I think there would be a lot less problematic behavior. But our automatic response to an
Mm.
emotion is to
Mm.
like. Oftentimes it's to ignore it or to engage in some kind of distraction. So this would be a guideline that you can like step by step introduce into your life. And I think this first step of just like when you feel a strong emotion, take a step back and just be curious about it. I think that's a really good place to start.
Mhm. And I think perhaps another message is nothing that we try has to work out the way we expect it to work out the first try. Sometimes it takes a little bit practice. Um,
100%.
yeah, yeah. Um, Vedrana, so I have a question for you with regards to support. So, what role does the support of others? So, we don't just have people who are experiencing BFRBs here watching this webinar. We have family members, loved ones, or friends of those who are. So, what role does the support of others play in a person's journey with BFRBs? And can you share some examples of how community support has been impactful?
Before I give the theoretical answer to your question, I remembered while you were asking, I remembered clients who at some point of our therapy program started, mostly people who pull their hair, they struggle with this a bit more, it seems to me, started talking openly with their hairdressers about things that bother them, things that they're shameful about, things that, feel vulnerable to them. And finding those hairdressers who react positively, who react with encouraging them, made a change. So shame went down, and this optimism and belief, not only I can live with this, but people can understand what is happening to me, went up. So when we are talking about support, we have to talk about community that does not, include specifically professionals or only family members or only people who struggle with the same things as we do. It also includes people who can really understand, without having personal experience, what is happening to us. Creating as much as possible that kind of community, or joining support groups wherever you can find them, online support groups, or things like that, and informing, educating. I know, and this is like a heavy part for a person who is struggling, but educating and informing people when you're ready about your experience, about your needs, about things that are happening to you, in order for them to understand, so that they can offer you support that you need. This is what can make, the key, or can be the key element in the change process. In my experience, especially with the hairdresser situation, when we encounter in unexpected places the compassion that we sometimes lack for our problems, so seeing and experiencing that people can be compassionate for what's happening to us can increase our self-compassion. And being self-compassion, simply because, as you and Sofia mentioned, it's not that easy. You just know A, B, C, D, and that's it. You go and you make the change. It comes with a lot of troubles, with ups and downs, with resistance, with disappointment, and then trying again. Self-compassion can play the key role in that, believing that you can do things without criticizing yourself, without pushing yourself too hard, without trying to meet some kind of expectation just because you have to stop pulling or just because you have to stop picking. And yes, for clients who struggle with picking, finding dermatologist who is in that way positive and encouraging is, those are the persons who can make the change and be supportive. On the other hand, understanding when we are talking about family members and from the client's perspective, what I hear often from them, that they can see that their family members are really worried. And they can see that by, mom being anxious, or dad telling me to stop, or my sister, asking me constantly, what happened to your face, or what happened to your hair, etc. So there are clients who can see all those questions that seem intrusive as questions that come from place of worry and care and love, which is good. Yet the actions themselves, the questions themselves, do not really show love and support and care, maybe even if family members really have that honest intention to do so. So in that case, if those things happen, people or family members just saying, stop, you're picking again, even with all the compassion in this world, it can trigger a person to, be resistant, to get angry, to be frustrated, because in their own experience, there's, this position, I would stop if I could. This is like the feeling. And if you tell me to stop something that I feel I can't stop, you're not helping, which is completely fair. So learning how to, make the bridge between those two things, family members, intention to be helpful, and clients or person's needs, is what the key is here. And bridge in family is always open communication. Now, not wanna, step into the trap like before. So even though it seems easy, sometimes the hardest thing is to openly communicate about what is happening to us, especially if we don't fully understand. So I don't know why I pull my hair. I don't want to pull my hair, but I'm doing that. So if I do not understand what's happening to me, I can't tell other people or my family how to support me. And this is where professional help comes in and helps the family system move from this problem. So if you feel like you have capacity to talk to your family members openly about what's happening to you, to tell them directly what works for you, what doesn't work, what feels like support and care, and what doesn't feel like that, this is the best advice I can give you. If you feel like you can't do that for yourself, feel like you need help, you can either join support groups or seek professional help, whatever feels better for you, or both. I always cheer for both, because different resources can offer different helps. And the last question was if I can give you an example. Yes, so the clients I'm working with in our program, the ones who decide to join support groups, I mostly either hear yes to the first question, if you're interested to join our support group. I hear the answer or read the answer yes, or I read the answer, I'm not sure, I have some doubts about I have to show my face there, if people will judge me, even though clients know that there are other people who struggle with the same thing as they are. They still have these doubts, probably because of their past experience where they were judged. And when I talk to the clients after they join support groups, I actually come across this optimistic, full of hope full of energy, you know, experience where they talk about, but I was there, I heard other people not only struggling the same way I do, but also, you know, there were people who managed to do some things who are far further away in this change process. I can see that, you know, this actually is possible. Not only that I believe, I saw people doing it. And that increases motivation, increases resilience, increases, you know, energy that people put into therapy, which is always wonderful. We need energy in therapy because change is hard.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, not only are they witnessing, I'm a little biased because I'm one of the facilitators for our support groups, so I love them, and I love
Excellent
everyone
job you're
who's
doing.
part of it. Thank you. Not only do the participants see the successes, that it's possible, that there is a way to manage and live with this, but also they also get to see the other side of it as well, that others also experience lapses and they're here, they've shown up, they're okay. You know, nothing overtly bad has happened to them, so they're not so incredibly frightful of experiencing a lapse for themselves. So that's really amazing just to see that. Again, it's just remind them that, first of all, you know, they're not alone. Management is possible. It's okay if I do have a lapse. I'm going to get through that. Yes, and I just have to add one thing quickly, because I'm biased. A lot of them say, I mean, obviously the program is amazing and they love the program. But some of them say the support groups are the best part of the program. It's because they feel a sense of belonging, and it's an opportunity for them to engage with other people who are going through something unique, but also similar to what they're experiencing. I think, you know, hair pulling and skin picking can be, as we've already mentioned in this webinar, an incredibly shameful experience. So it can then force us to isolate ourselves, and go through that horrible vicious cycle of the shame and the guilt and the self-blame, and then isolating, and then we pull more, and it just that cycle just continues. And being in a community where you're surrounded by other people, where you feel safe to communicate and share, and just talk about your experience, is an incredibly powerful experience. And then just my last comment about this, it doesn't specifically have to be a support group if you're not able to join one. There are so many social groups online, like your Facebook, Skin Pick and Trick Stop have a private Facebook group. There are so many other social groups online as well on Facebook and Instagram, that are also private. And the amount of love and support that happens on these platforms, and obviously they're free to join. It's mind-blowing, and it's just so inspiring just to sit back and just watch people who are not professionals. They're just day-to-day people who are just experiencing these disorders, and who just genuinely care about each other and just offering so much care and guidance, and it's incredible. So I just wanted to share that with everyone too. Sofia, how do you approach treatment with someone who is resistant or a little bit hesitant to face their BFRBs?
I would say generally with a lot of curiosity, and I try to be not judgmental. I mean, if a person is already here, meaning in the program or in private practice, then it usually means that there is some kind of ambivalence between the will to change and some kind of reluctance or resistance, and that can be all kinds of things. So you have to first of all, yeah, be curious and just understand what's going on. So maybe someone is reluctant because they think it's not going to work anyways, like I can't change it. Then once we've explored that, the first step to approach it would be to on the one hand, build motivation and kind of create trust that this is a process that can indeed help you, but also work on realistic expectations because I've heard this, we've said the sentence many times in only in this event here. It's like stopping or not stopping. Like a lot of times we talk about it like it's a habit you can't just break, you can't just stop. So it makes you feel like either you stop or you don't. You continue on, but in reality, in therapy, it's it's a gradual process of I think we talked about that in the past that therapy success can also have all kinds of different shapes and sizes. So it doesn't always mean that at the end of therapy you stop completely, but you can always manage to do some progress. But once you set yourself realistic expectations, you might be more willing to do the first step. Whereas if you think, okay, it only works if I stop, then like you might as well just like give up in the beginning because it usually isn't that easy. If someone is reluctant because they're ashamed, which is also very common, then obviously the approach would be different. Maybe they have a lot of motivation, but it's really hard to open up, to even talk about it. And then my approach would be much more normalizing, trying to get them into support groups so they can also have this feeling of like there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like there's a lot of other people who have the same problem. It's interesting in those moments, I always remember that BFRBs are about as common as OCD, yet OCD is so much more talked about, so much that like there's also stigma around OCD, but like less and more common knowledge. So normalize and validate the experience and try to build this trust so the person will really open up and then we can start working on the problem. And then there's, some cases where people just downplay the problem or where clients kind of came in for something else. And then we notice on the way, oh, there's this thing. Oh, wait, that's a thing. Like it's not only me doing this.
Yeah.
I just had a client, she came in for totally different reasons. And then we realized, oh, she cuts a little hairs off her head and she actually really wants to change that. She just never thought about the fact that therapy could help her. And that would require a different approach altogether. Yeah. So I guess just like stay curious and confident in the fact that therapy usually can lead to some kind of progress or change.
Going in on the other side of that coin, Vedrana, how can someone then recognize if their progress has stalled? And what steps can they take to move forward?
Well, in my experience from clients' perspective, the way I see it is that progress always takes more time than they would want it to take. So as Sofia mentioned, the key there is to manage expectations. Most people come to therapy with this idea of therapy being, a recipe book or a cookbook where you just, go there, learn the steps, go home and do it yourself. I wish it was that easy because then my job would be easy, but it's not. It can get really, really messy. And in my experience, the messier it gets, the more work is done. So when we talk about stalling, there is no like official criteria on how long therapy should last, how fast we should move through, stages of change. But if you feel like your specific progress has stalled, then you have to talk about it openly with your therapist. Only if on the other side, us therapists know what is happening, can understand what you are feeling, can take a look in your inner world, we can help and support you in your process. I guess that's the best answer on how to recognize I can give on how to recognize if your progress has stalled. The second question, is a bit more tricky because it's always, tricky to talk about specific actions a person should take. It's deep breathing, just breathing through. It will take you places. Um, in my view, we can learn a lot from every step of the process where we feel we are not, progressing fast enough, where we feel that we are stuck, that we feel a lot of resistance. For example, we know 5 tools that we should have, that we should use when we are feeling an urge. We have 2 fidgets, we have deep breathing, we have mindfulness, etc. But we are not using any of those. And then we feel like we are not progressing. I'm here, I'm standing in front of this toolbox, I'm not using any of it, and I'm trying to fix this thing. Stopping, leaving your expectations aside that you need to fix something, that you need to use this specific toolbox. So putting pin on all that, on all of that, and trying to understand why at this point you are stalling, why at this point you are feeling in this moment of time, at this stage of the change process, why do you feel resistance? Why you're so reluctant to use any of the tools that's before you, and talking again directly and openly with your therapist so you can actually understand what's happening inside of you. This is the best thing you can do. This is the best action you can take. Okay. We don't expect you to know everything about yourself. Again, we wouldn't have jobs if you did. So, but we do have this kind of, it's not even expectations. It's just we are supporting our clients to talk to us about anything that seems completely strange, completely irrational, completely illogical, even ungrateful, because, some clients tell, here, you're this wonderful therapist giving me all these tools, helping me understand all my feelings and thoughts, and yet I can't make this change. That also often happens, but clients are not there to make the change because we are good therapists. They are there to make the change because they want, or do not want that. That's also an option. I tried, the change is not for me, and I won't do this anymore. Also fair option. In my experience, when a person understands the resistance, they usually want to continue on that path and actually make the change.
We have so many great questions, and as usual in our webinars, the time just flies so quickly. So I'm hoping we can quickly get through them all. Sofia, could you talk about how physical health, such as sleep, diet, or exercise, plays a role in managing BFRBs?
Sure. I'm gonna try to make it brief. I think, and that's probably not gonna surprise a lot of people, sleep, exercise, and diet are like super important. They're at the base of every psychological problem, because, and I kind of differentiate between sleep and diet, which are kind of necessary. Like if I don't sleep enough, and if I don't eat, if I have poor diet, then I will necessarily have problems. Whereas exercise is kind of like a protective factor that I can add, and that will balance me. And so when I don't sleep enough, then I tend to be more impulsive. My impulse control is lower. I might experience more stress, and I might be less in control of my emotions, which are all triggers for BFRBs, right? And I see this with my clients all the time. Like sometimes it's really those very, very simple changes that can make a real difference. The same goes for diet. If there's a lot of fluctuation in my blood sugar levels, and I am more irritable or anxious, and if I, for example, starve myself, if I go on strict diets, then I will be hungry, moody, and more impulsive. And on the same level, exercise can do the opposite. Like it can help me deal better with stress. I connect with my body, which is very important for BFRBs. It can create a positive relationship with my body, which is also very important for BFRBs, specifically for skin picking. Improve concentration, help me sleep better. Yeah. So it's very important, and it's something that I put great focus on in my personal therapies.
Just with regards to the time, so just to conclude, this is a question I would like both of you to hopefully answer. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is feeling hopeless about overcoming their skin picking or hair pulling? So they might be on this webinar. It might be their first time exploring treatment or just the possibility of getting through their skin picking or hair pulling, and are maybe considering treatment. What's that one piece of advice that you'd like to give someone, especially if they're feeling really hopeless at this time? Vedrana, you can go first.
Yes, as soon as I have the answer, I'll. I'm not sure if this counts as the advice per se, but this kind of like hope or belief that you can get there, that you can have that life that you really want, that pulling free life, picking free life, where you can just swim or wear whatever you want to wear with no makeup, stuff like that. It gets hard, there are a lot of lapses. It's really hard to stay optimistic. But it seems to me that this belief that I can do this for myself, I can find strength to give myself better opportunity for better, more kind life. Trying to focus on that, to work on that. For example, if you had, I don't know, 5 days pulling free, streak, and it tells a lot about how that you can do it, that you have the potential to do it. If you're pulling a lot and then you didn't pull them after feeling 3 urges, it tells a lot about the potential you carry inside. It's just a matter of finding it and developing it.
I think from my side, what I find helpful in those moments is to think about what is my definition of success right now. So when I feel hopeless, oftentimes I feel like, okay, I'm not moving forward. I'm not, progressing in therapy or anywhere as much as I wanted to. And then because therapy can, like, some people think it's like just like this straight line in terms of progress, but in the end it's like a lot of ups and downs. And when we're in a down, we easily feel like, oh, we didn't learn anything, I'm right back at zero. And then remembering, okay, what is my definition of success can be very helpful. Sometimes it's, if we, for example, measure success only in how much we pick or pull, then that's difficult, because the picking and the pulling is not only affected by my own efforts. Sometimes I go through a stressful phase. Sometimes things are going on in my life that affect it as well. So it's not 100% in my control. So if in those moments, I define success more as in how many times a day that I try to use this one strategy that I'm working on right now, or what is the smallest possible step I can do right now to move forward, right? Then I will have more of a feeling of that something's happening, and will feel less hopeless. Whereas if I only define success as based on the end result, then that can really lead to moments of hopelessness, because it's not all in our control.
And I think for me, I just want to take an acknowledgement that if you're here in the live webinar, or if you're watching the recording, the fact that you are present means that there is a little bit of hope, that you do believe in yourself. And I also just want to acknowledge the bravery that it took to sign up for this. Yeah, so that's also amazing, and that's important to acknowledge. So we're at the end of the session for today. It's always an incredible discussion. It's always wonderful to hear from both of you, different perspectives and different insights. I'm certainly grateful, and I'm sure our attendees are as well. I want to let all the viewers and the attendees know that we work incredibly hard to put these webinars together, coming up with the topics and the content, and for showing up. But we really want to hear from you too. So we want to know what topics you find interesting. What topics do you want to ask about and learn more about? So if you do have those suggestions, please do send them to us at our customer support email address. Just a reminder for those who are on SkinPick, it's the support@skinpick.com email address, and those for TrickStop, it's support@trickstop.com. We really want to hear from you, and hopefully you get to attend one of the webinars that you've suggested. Yes, and again, if you have any questions or any comments with regards to tonight's webinar, please also email us, and we'll get back to you about that as well. So thank you, Dr. Sofia, Wenzler, and thank you so much, Vedrana. It's wonderful to have you. And everyone who attended this, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us too. And for those
Thank you so much.
who joined and stayed until the end of the webinar, if you are interested in joining the program, we do promise to give you a promo code. So here's to get your pen and paper out. It's webinar 100. So that's a promo code to get you $100 off your first month. Yes, Sofia, sorry, you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you for everyone who joined, and for you guys, of course, Meryl and Vedrana.
You're welcome. I think you're on mute, Vedrana.
Yes, I am. I said, I'm sorry. I said it, I hope it was helpful and interesting to all of you who were with us, and come again. We like to talk. So.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day and evening, wherever you are.
You too.
Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.